that, but a twofold question. There's a divide in the Senate, and there will be amendments. There's different points of view on this sort of thing, and we had the Aboriginal Committee recommend up to a year delay. We've had some senators who've felt that provinces should be responsible for the number of plants in each province. Those are two issues that I want to address. They talk about in the Aboriginal committee that no consultation with First Nations, yet I hear you say in your opening statement you consulted, your group consulted 30 Indigenous groups. When that kind of conversation was going on with these 30 Indigenous groups, which sounds like a good measure of the Indigenous peoples, what did you hear then? And I'm wondering why now, after what the Aboriginal Committee heard, they're looking for a one-year delay. And also on the issue of 4 plants should be, I don't quite understand why that would be there, but just leave it to the provinces. This is Canada.
Let me just say a little bit about the Aboriginal consultations that we undertook. And Mark, you might like to comment on the 4 plants. In terms of our Indigenous consultations, we knew from the beginning that they would be an important voice to be heard. And that's why we had a roundtable specifically on Indigenous issues and viewpoints, and we invited a wide range of representatives from national organizations, from local communities, from the Aboriginal healthcare professions, and so on. And in fact, at all our roundtables we held across the country, we made very sure as a task force that Indigenous individuals were invited. Now, not everybody who was invited from the Indigenous community came to our roundtables or our Indigenous roundtable, but they were absolutely invited because we understood that was an important voice. We have heard, as probably the Aboriginal, I know the Aboriginal Committee has heard, a diversity of viewpoints. We heard some very articulate chiefs and submissions from provinces, Aboriginal groups in Saskatchewan, just as one example, where they have carefully thought out, and they actually presented to us a template for what Indigenous involvement in legalized cannabis could look like going forward. So there's a group of people who have thought this through and presented us with a template, and the government with a template for Aboriginal involvement in this area. Was that every chief? Was that every community? Absolutely not. We also heard from elders, and of course, elders, some of the elders from whom we heard expressed the concern around the drug issues that especially their young people face in their communities, the social and economic harm that exists now, right? And this is the thing I think we need to focus on, that in fact the elders talk to us passionately about the fact that these problems exist in their community now. So the issue is, does it make it worse, or do we have a chance with legalization, based on what you heard from Mark, around research, about new interventions, to actually make it better for these communities with the right supports? And the Government of Canada and most provinces have committed to use some substantial part of their revenues, their tax revenues, for exactly mental health programming, addictions programming, the federal government's programs for support on in First Nations and other Indigenous communities. We didn't hear from every Indigenous person in this country, and that is not dissimilar from any other group. But we as a task force were from the beginning very aware of both the economic opportunities. We heard from articulate young chiefs who see this as an opportunity for sustainable economic activity in their community if done right. We also heard from elders who were concerned about what this might mean for their young people. So I think we heard the diversity of opinion you heard, which was why we clearly recommended to the Government of Canada that consultations and collaboration need to be ongoing. But to Mark's point, this is a process. It's not a point in time. And those consultations and that level of collaboration can take place before, during, and after legalization. Mark, you might want to talk about the plans.
We're up to the time.
I'll try. I think there are various levels of readiness for this process in different levels of the country. And some communities have just now beginning to engage. Some have begun thinking about this a long time ago. However, it does not mean that we should delay the implementation of a legalization act, because it will not prevent problems from happening now. This is already going on in communities around the country, including indigenous communities. By making it and delaying the process simply prohibits us from engaging, from dealing with the issue in a more open and transparent manner.